Here we go. The House Judiciary Committee, under the leadership of the odious Jim Jordan, passed a resolution yesterday advancing contempt of Congress charges against Attorney General Merrick Garland over his refusal to turn over audio of President Biden's interview with a special counsel looking into allegations that Biden mishandled classified documents. Special counsel Robert Hur declined to prosecute, but why let it drop? Keep a bad thing going, is what the Republicans always say. President Biden refused to turn over the recordings, citing executive privilege. Now, a full vote before Congress is not expected to pass, but if it somehow does, the contempt of Congress charges will then be handed over to Attorney General Merrick Garland, who will have to decide whether to prosecute himself, which he probably will do just to come across as fair. You know, the same way Bill Barr did. Remember Bill Barr? Calling it a betrayal of Israel. The Republican-controlled House passed a resolution yesterday condemning Joe Biden for holding up delivery of weapons as Biden pressures Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu into not going into Rafah, the southernmost city in Gaza, where hundreds of thousands of civilians are sheltering. Biden reversed course earlier in the week and said he will go ahead with a $1 billion military aid package to Israel, but Republicans passed the resolution anyway. Speaker Mike Johnson, on the very same day, unveiled a 7-foot bronze statue of the Reverend Billy Graham inside the Capitol. The statue of Billy Graham will replace the one of Charles Aycock, a North Carolina governor whose statue was replaced due to his long history of white supremacy. So on the same day that Speaker Mike Johnson passed this bill in support of Israel, he unveils a statue honoring Billy Graham, a world-class anti-Semite. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. H.R. Haldeman was Richard Nixon's White House chief of staff and ended up going to prison over Watergate. 30 years ago, H.R. Haldeman published his White House diaries, where he wrote about a phone conversation then President Richard Nixon had with the Reverend Billy Graham. This is where Nixon complained about the Jews in Washington gumming up his presidency. Graham, according to the H.R. Haldeman diaries, agreed with Nixon and called the Jews satanic. Well, after H.R. Haldeman's diaries were published, Billy Graham, the Reverend, was outraged, and he insisted he never spoke those words. Sure he didn't. Well, Richard Nixon's recording of all his White House conversations have been revealed. And it turns out the Reverend Billy Graham was kind of right. He didn't speak those words about the Jews, because the words he actually spoke, caught on tape, were far, far more anti-Semitic, and shockingly so. These tapes, these Nixon tapes, came out in 2002. And I'm going to read his words to you, the Reverend Billy Graham's words to you, because they're illustrative of not just who Billy Graham really was, but who Mike Johnson is and why he passed this resolution in support of Israel on the very same day he unveiled the statue of the anti-Semite Billy Graham. This is kind of rough, and they've covered it up because they want to pretend this isn't true, but it is. So this is from the New York Times headline: Billy Graham responds to lingering anger over 1972 remarks on Jews. This is a recording from 1972, and this is from an article from March 17th, 2002, after the tapes were released. From the New York Times, quote, Mr. Graham said on the tape, quote, they're the ones putting out the pornographic stuff, after agreeing with Nixon that left-wing Jews dominate the news media. The Jewish, quote, stranglehold has got to be broken or the country's going down the drain, he continued, suggesting that if Mr. Nixon were reelected, quote, then we might be able to do something, unquote. This is where it kind of gets interesting, and this is where you should think about people like Speaker Johnson or Marjorie Taylor Greene, who claim they're big supporters of Israel. From the New York Times, finally, Mr. Graham said that Jews did not know his true feelings about him. Okay? He's, quote, he says, I go and I keep friends with Mr. Rosenthal at the New York Times and people of that sort, you know, he told Mr. Nixon, referring to A.M. Rosenthal, then the newspaper's executive editor, quote, and not all the Jews, but a lot of the Jews are great friends of mine. They swarm around me and are friendly to me because they know that I'm friendly with Israel, but they don't know how I really feel about what they are doing to this country. And I have no power, no way to handle them, but I would stand up if under proper circumstances. I would stand up against the Jews if under proper circumstances. That would be the Reverend Billy Graham. Okay? So, after denying he ever said anything derogatory about the Jews, this was in 1994 when H.R. Haldeman published his diaries, Billy Graham denied that he ever said what H.R. Haldeman said he said. Well, in 2002, the anti-Semite Billy Graham was caught in a lie. The tapes were real. So he issued a brief 4-sentence apology and refused to discuss it any further. That's whose statue was unveiled in the Capitol, in Statuary Hall yesterday, on the same day that Mike Johnson passed this resolution condemning Joe Biden for threatening to withhold arms to Israel. See, Mike Johnson, like most of these Republicans, like Billy Graham, they say they support Israel, but they do not support the Jews. Mike Johnson wants a homeland for the Jews so they can leave this country and go someplace else. Mike Johnson supports Israel, but not Jewish values. And to my Jewish friends who think Republicans have your back, they do, but only to stab you in it. This is the mop-up for May 17th. Thank you for finding me. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Please hit the like button so I remain in your feed and share this episode. Some of you over the years have requested transcripts of this show. It's something I've always wanted to provide for free, but it's been hard to do. But thanks to some of you buying useless crap over at my store, we can now offer transcripts of this show free of charge. If you would like a free transcript of today's episode, go to shopdavidfeldman.com and hit the transcripts menu. We now have transcripts for the entire month of May. Moving forward, we will post transcripts of each episode the day after a podcast is dropped. If you want them, they're free. Just go to shopdavidfeldman.com. And thank you to all the morons who bought worthless garbage over there. You are paying for the free transcripts. I told you not to buy anything, but you went ahead and did, so now we can offer free transcripts. Okay, Joe Biden and Donald Trump will hold their first debate late next month. The debate will not be in front of an audience, reminiscent of the final debate of 2020 when Bernie Sanders took on Joe Biden during the COVID lockdown. Remember that? This is identical to the very first televised presidential debate back in 1960 between Nixon and Kennedy, where we saw two candidates standing before the American people without an audience, the way it should be, without the audience. And this puts Donald Trump at a distinct disadvantage, forcing him to play to an empty room where substance triumphs over crowd-pleasing lines that offer nothing but bravado. Audiences ruin comedy, and they ruin presidential debates. When comedians or politicians play to the crowd, it's sweaty, and it keeps them from saying the important things. I don't want to hear snappy rejoinders at a presidential debate. I want to hear policy. Presidential debates, especially during primary season, have devolved into a cockfight. It's each candidate shouting over one another, vying for the best soundbite. And then after that debate, reporters judge their performances like it's one of those recaps of Saturday Night Live. It makes voters, politicians, and reporters look, sound, and behave like imbeciles. So I welcome June's debate on CNN without an audience. Let's see what Donald Trump has without an audience. Thomas Jefferson got a lot of things wrong, but he was spot on when he wrote, quote, "A well-informed citizenry is the best defense against tyranny." A well-informed citizenry is the best defense against tyranny. The reason Trump is doing as well as he is right now in the polls is there are way too many ignorant voters in America. Donald Trump, seen here literally staring at the sun during an eclipse, famously said while running back in 2016, "We love the poorly educated." But new polling shows that, according to Newsweek, Donald Trump nationwide is leading Joe Biden among better educated Americans, proving just because you have a degree, it doesn't mean you're smart. Now, these polls are somewhat meaningless. Polls 5 months, 6 months out are a snapshot of the mood, but they're not predictive because moods change. Think of these polls as weather events as opposed to the overall climate. You can't predict outcomes based on day-to-day polling, but you can spot lightning, tornadoes, and drizzles of data. The national polls show a dead heat. It's pretty much Biden down by 1 point within the margin of error. Now, what is going to be significant is this first debate at the end of June. In the past, presidential debates for the general election had little effect on the outcome because they were held in the weeks leading up to Election Day. Debates are held end of September, usually middle of October. By then, early voting in some cases has already begun. And for a lot of Americans, their vote has been set since the convention. It would take, they say, some monumental gaffe during the debate for them to change their mind. That's what they say about debates coming so close to Election Day, that a monumental gaffe will change the results. But Even a monumental gaffe doesn't move the needle. I remember back in 2004, George W. Bush running for re-election and freezing up during the first debate with Democrat John Kerry. He just Mitch McConnelled into space for what seemed like 20 seconds. And here's what I remember. On Election Day, I sat in on a couple of conference calls with pollsters, and all the exit polling, we all forgot this. In 2004, all the exit polling showed Kerry beating George W. Bush. And according to most of the top pollsters at the time, the reason Kerry was about to beat Bush in 2004 was because Bush froze up during that first debate. And that was what the pollsters cited as the number one reason John Kerry was about to win. Not because Bush illegally invaded the wrong country. The pollsters said because he froze up. That's what the exit polls all showed. And then I tuned in that night. Kerry lost and I froze up. Okay. Well, the exit polls got 2004 completely wrong. And Bush ended up beating Kerry resoundingly by 2 percentage points with the popular vote. The Electoral College was a little tighter, with Bush getting 286 and Kerry getting 251. Okay, but look at Ohio with 20 electoral votes. Back in 2004, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. wrote extensively on how the Bush team stole Ohio. Bush beat Kerry in Ohio by more than 100,000 votes. That's a lot to steal. But 20 years ago, Bobby Kennedy's brainworm hadn't made a pig of itself, and Bobby was still able to uncover what many considered legitimate research at the time, revealing massive voter fraud in Ohio. Look at what happens when you give Ohio to John Kerry back in 2004. Kerry gets 271 votes. You flip those 20, Bush only gets 266. You need 270 to win the Electoral College. Now, Kerry, had he won Ohio, still would have lost the popular vote. He would have won. It would have been a flip of what happened to Bush in 2000. Bush lost the popular vote, and he really lost the Electoral College. And I bring this up because I want to show you that Donald Trump is not an outlier. Donald Trump is who the Republican Party has always been. Those of you old enough to remember, I want you to think back to 2000. Bush clearly lost the popular vote, and he clearly lost Florida. His brother, Jeb, was governor of Florida, and we all know his brother tried to steal that election down in Florida for his brother George. He scrubbed black people off the voting rolls, and he still couldn't steal it for his brother. They had to take it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court had to steal the election for George W. by stopping the count in Florida and awarding the presidency to George W. Bush, who was an illegitimate president, who lost the popular vote and would have lost in Florida if his team of lawyers hadn't flooded into Florida and invented new ways to challenge votes in heavily black and Democratic strongholds. A recount of Florida was held a year after the election. It was held by a consortium of news organizations down in Florida. They concluded Al Gore would have won a statewide hand count of both undervotes and overvotes. Undervotes are ballots that are rejected by the machines because of something like a dimpled Chad. But it has been clearly marked as a vote, and you can see it in a hand count. And an overvote is a ballot discarded by the machine, which mistakenly believes 2 votes for 2 candidates had been cast, but a hand count is able to determine the intent of the voter. And Gore would have won a statewide hand count. Okay? Now, try to imagine in 2004, Kerry winning the Electoral College, but losing the popular vote. The same thing that happened to Bush in 2000. Can you imagine Karl Rove and George W. Bush ceding power with those results? They would have immediately delegitimized the Electoral College, the very thing that put Bush into the Oval Office. Bush and Rove, and eventually the Supreme Court would have insisted Bush won the popular vote, and the Electoral College is purely ceremonial. Or at least they would have tried to argue that, because that's who the Republicans are. They stole that election in 2000, because for Republicans, way before Trump, it's always been not about winning fairly, it's about winning. Anyway, back to the debates. Bush completely tanked it during the September 30th, 2004 debate in Coral Gables, Florida. And like I said, the exit polls showed that's why he was going to lose. But he didn't lose. The exit polls were wrong. Why? Because that debate was on September 30th, roughly a month before Election Day, just weeks before early voting begins, and the die had already been cast. People had already made their minds up. And Bush's catastrophic failure during that debate, it didn't matter, because you were either for the war in Iraq and against same-sex marriage, or you were against the war in Iraq and for same-sex marriage. That's what the 2004 election was all about. And Americans had already made up their minds before that debate even started. Nothing was going to change it. Now, you could say Bush had a month to recover from that debacle, and I'll grant you that. It's partly true, which is why Biden and Trump holding their debate next month is good for both of them, but as you'll see later, much better for Joe Biden. If Joe Biden appears inarticulate, if Trump talks over him and comes across as the alpha dog, that will be problematic. But Biden will have 5 months to correct that impression. I don't think that's going to happen without an audience. Trump is going to look ridiculous talking over Biden without an audience cheering him on. Watching Trump without a crowd will be like watching a lot of those late night talk shows 4 years ago during COVID without the studio audience, without the cheering and forced laughs from an overly caffeinated audience. You began to see how paper thin the material actually was. So I think the same thing will happen with Trump. There are advantages and disadvantages to holding the debates this early. In the long run, I think Biden is the true beneficiary of a quieter debate without an audience, because Biden now is hard to hear. He's become a bit frail. But if you listen to him being interviewed by Howard Stern, Joe Biden was great because it was a quiet room. It was a conversation. Unfortunately, sometimes it's hard to make out what Joe Biden is saying, but that's okay. He's old. And that's good that he's old. Being old is good. Reagan did well in 1984 against Walter Mondale precisely because Reagan was a little frail. Voters root for a president who is frail if he's likable. And Joe Biden, like Reagan, is likable. You want to root for Joe Biden. Trump, on the other hand, is unlikable. He's a nasty bully. Most importantly, Biden doesn't have to shout because he can let his record speak for him. He would be at a disadvantage in front of a crowd, distracted by the boos and the cheering. It would be hard to make out what he's saying. So I'm glad the debates will be in a quiet studio. One of the reasons we can hold these debates before the conventions is because this is the longest general election in modern American history. We've known who the nominees were before Super Tuesday. If you've noticed, primaries are still going on. Maryland just had one on Tuesday. And in other election cycles, the presidential horse race can often stretch out until June, but not this time. So both candidates are wisely holding the debates before their conventions. And this is where I expect Biden to get the same bump in the polls he got right after March's State of the Union. Biden turned it around after that State of the Union. He not just in donations, but the polls started to pop. Lately, he seems to be sagging a little. I'm going to go over this in a second. He seems to be sagging in the swing states. And I know that these debates, especially next month's, will work to Joe Biden's advantage. We will see an even bigger bump in the polls than we saw from his State of the Union because Americans are realizing it's crunch time, which brings me back to Thomas Jefferson saying, quote, "A well-informed citizenry is the best defense against tyranny." The debate is June 27th and will be on CNN. Very important that it's on CNN. According to the New York Times' most recent poll, 17% of Americans blame Joe Biden for Roe getting overturned. Now, this election is about abortion, especially in Wisconsin. This election will be decided by women in suburban swing states, including North Carolina. Biden is doing remarkably well among women, suburban women in North Carolina. Even Catholic and Protestant women with only a high school degree who are more likely to vote for Donald Trump in other swing states are leaning towards Biden. I didn't mean to say only have a high school degree. That sounds pejorative. I apologize. So Biden needs to win Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Biden is much stronger in Michigan with suburban women, no matter what their education. Much stronger in Michigan than any of these polls are revealing. Biden's only weakness in Michigan is with white evangelical women. But that's his only problem in Michigan. The polls I'm looking at show Biden in Michigan leading among Muslim women. Again, this election will be decided by suburban women in swing states. Now, you might remember 14% of Michigan Democrats withheld their vote during the primary to protest Joe Biden's unwavering support of Israel's war in Gaza. Biden stopped the hemorrhaging of the Muslim vote in Michigan. For many reasons, he's been able to stanch the bleeding. There's been a lot of White House outreach to Michigan's Muslim community, and partly because of 14% of those votes being withheld from him in Michigan, partly because of that, Biden has, to some degree, split from Israel's Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. Not completely, but he's calling for a two-state solution, while Benjamin Netanyahu is saying, not on my watch. Obviously, some arms shipments have resumed, but again, some people think it's tacky to talk about the politics of Gaza, but it can only be solved through politics. It will never be solved until Israel recognizes Hamas as a political entity, the same way they eventually had to recognize the PLO as a political entity. This is politics. Politics is not a dirty word. It may not be the best way to solve problems, but it's the only way to solve problems. So, politically speaking, Biden has been masterful in winning back the Muslim community through his actions, at least for the time being in Michigan, through his actions. He is winning back the Muslim community. And don't forget, there's also a huge Muslim community in Arizona. I don't have time to talk about Gaza today. If I do a show tomorrow night or Saturday, I'll get to Gaza. This election, according to the polling I'm reading, is not about Gaza or Israel. If you poll most young voters who are furious about Israel, it's still not what's going to animate their vote. That's what the polling shows. They are really furious about inflation. They are really furious about Jerome Powell raising interest rates, which makes their credit card debt impossible to get out from underneath. If you have, this is where the problem with low information voters who don't understand why they can't get out from underneath their debt. It's partly because Jerome Powell has been keeping interest rates high. If you have a $10,000 credit card debt and Jerome Powell, who runs the Fed, if he raises interest rates, that means your monthly fee to service that $10,000 debt goes up. By the way, Jerome Powell is a Trump appointee. Biden renominated Jerome Powell. Usually, presidents come in and they nominate their own Fed chair, but Biden kept Jerome Powell on, and Biden is not allowed to jawbone, as they say, the Fed. You're not allowed to politicize the Fed. He's not allowed to pressure the Fed to lower interest rates. But Trump says he's going to do that. I don't know if it's against the law, but it's against the policy. The Fed is supposed to be above politics, supposedly. So while this, I have to apologize. I'm perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with me. I had a cold, and now it's allergy season, and it's destroying my voice. But so sometimes I have to clear my throat, and I apologize. So it's a little annoying, and I know I'm a little raspy. It's from hay fever, and just getting this cold out of my system, so I apologize. So, while this election will be decided by women in the suburbs, a lot of these voters don't see the same economy that the Fed sees, or the one that the stock market sees, or the one Biden is trying to run on. On a macro level, the economy may be the best in American history, but not for voters who are living with debt. And inflation makes that debt unbearable. Even though inflation is coming down, interest rates are not coming down, or they're not coming down fast enough. And that makes it impossible to get out of debt. So when you read the polls and you wonder why people feel like there's the facts about the economy and then there's how people feel about the economy, there's a lot of debt in this country. And that is what is making younger voters angry. They probably don't understand, nobody does, the relationship between interest rates going up and how much harder it gets to service your credit card debt. People just know, I can't pay my bills, I can't pay my rent, I can't buy food. And that is what is making younger voters angry. That is what is making male voters angry. With women, it's abortion. That is what's animating the American voter come November. Inflation and abortion. Not the environment, not gun deaths, not Gaza. Most Americans in the swing states are angry about high interest rates. They don't know they're angry about the high interest rates. They're just angry about inflation. But what's making them angry is the high interest rates that Jerome Powell over at the Fed is deploying to combat inflation, and that's making credit card debt unbearable. It's making buying a home unaffordable. And higher interest rates make rent unaffordable because the people who own the property have to raise rents to service their mortgage, which has gone up because of higher interest rates. I'll have more on the Biden economy in a second. Again, this election is shaping up to be about abortion for women and men, but younger people, inflation. And here is the problem that Biden faces. 14% of voters think it's his fault that Roe got overturned. Now, I read that. It's a new New York Times poll, and I thought my head was going to explode. I know it's hard for my listeners to understand, but there are a lot of Americans, a lot of MAGA supporters who've written to me who say, why are you blaming Donald Trump for Roe getting overturned? The Dobbs decision was written in 2022 when Biden was president. Some of my listeners, the MAGA morons, write to me. They keep saying, why do you blame Trump for Roe getting overturned? It happened on Biden's watch. Some of them are just pretending to be stupid. But some of them really are stupid. 14% of Americans are blaming Biden for Roe getting overturned. You can't explain that other than by saying 14% of Americans are not paying attention. We have low information voters who don't realize Trump picked 3 judges who all lied, committed perjury, essentially, during their confirmation hearings when they said Roe was settled law. But the first opportunity they got to overturn Roe, well, that occurred in 2022. And they overturned it. And that's why 14% of voters think Biden is responsible. They don't understand why it happened on his watch. This is why I'm glad next month's debate will be on CNN. Now, CNN takes a lot of hits. Despite all of CNN's problems, just like the New York Times, CNN tries to be a legitimate news organization. And its website is pretty great. CNN reports the news, at least they try to. And they issue corrections. And they challenge their guests. They correct their guests. You might remember last year during Trump's town hall on CNN, Caitlin Collins tried to correct Donald Trump every step of the way, but he bulldozed over her with a fire hose of lies. She kept trying to correct him. It was, if you remember, a town hall in front of an audience. But in June, there will be no audience for the debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. CNN is going to correct Donald Trump's lies. They are going to do that. It's going to be very uncomfortable for Donald Trump. By the way, I wouldn't be surprised if he pulls out. I don't think he's thinking clearly right now because of the trials. This is a foolish decision on his part to do his first debate in almost 4 years. He's not prepared. He didn't build any scar tissue. He refused to debate during the primaries. He's only surrounded himself with yes men, nobody challenging him. CNN is going to challenge him. Some of you might remember CNN's Candy Crawley moderating the debate between Romney and then President Obama in 2012. Obama was running for re-election. Again, Trump is not an outlier. Romney was an inveterate liar, just like Trump. Romney's entire presidential campaign in 2012 was peppered with nonstop lies that were pretty much left unchecked. And Trump in 2012 watched Romney and realized, hey, if you're a presidential candidate, you can lie with abandon. And that's pretty much how Trump won 4 years later. Freudian slip. Biden has told some half-truths, but not the way Trump does. Biden's half-truths are about his personal life, not about policy. You know, he'll say he was arrested trying to meet Mandela, or I was arrested at a civil rights demonstration in the 60s. Those are half-truths that he's told so many times he believes them, but it's not about policy. So to Candy Crawley's credit, back in 2012, during that debate, Romney lied and accused Barack Obama of not having the courage to call Benghazi a terrorist attack. And Obama masterfully allowed Romney to continue this lie. He said, "Please proceed, Governor. It's great to watch." And he let Romney just walk into this trap. It was brilliant. And Candy Crawley, who is a real journalist, ended up correcting Romney in real time during the debate, right there on the spot. And she said, "I'm sorry, Governor Romney, that's not true. The president immediately called Benghazi a terrorist attack in the Rose Garden when he issued his condemnation. And it was a bad moment for Romney. He didn't lose because of this, but it was a bad moment for Romney." And what happened afterwards? Candy Crawley from CNN took fire. She was accused of bias. It's considered bias to correct Mitt Romney's lies. Well, she's no longer on CNN, which is too bad. I assume she's teaching somewhere. But Trump, and I wouldn't be surprised if he pulls out, he's not going to get away with those lies on CNN. At least I don't think he will. And CNN will be accused of bias by Trump supporters because they kept correcting him. I will be very surprised if Trump doesn't pull out of this debate. But if this debate happens, Joe Biden's going to get a huge, huge bump in the polls afterwards. So I'm thinking, let me know what you think. I'm thinking of hosting a watch party on Zoom next month for the debate. We did this 4 years ago for all the debates. And then what I did is I took your calls over Zoom. I brought in guests, and I would air it on my audio podcast, but not on YouTube. We tried watch parties on YouTube live. It doesn't work. So here's what I'm thinking. We haven't done this for a while. I'm thinking of hosting a watch party on Zoom. We'll watch the debate together, not on YouTube, just on Zoom privately. And then afterwards, I will record an episode of my audio podcast. We'll talk about the debates. I'll take your Zoom calls. I'll have guests. Let me know in the comments section whether you would be interested in attending a debate watch party for the CNN debate between Biden and Trump next month. We would watch the debate together and then have a discussion where I take your calls and talk with some guests. Let me know in the comments section. You're listening to the Mop Up for May 17th, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. Subscribe to this channel and, of course, my newsletter, and leave a comment. I read all your comments. If you would like a transcript of this episode, go to shopdavidfeldman.com. We have transcribed all the episodes for May, and you can download them for free over at shopdavidfeldman.com. And while you're over there, whatever you do, don't buy any of that garbage. But the reason the transcripts are posted over at shopdavidfeldman.com is because the people who were stupid enough to purchase something, and that money makes it possible for me to offer the transcripts for free. Climate change will not be on the ballot come November. It should be, not being debated. It should be on the ballot, especially since Donald Trump openly solicited $1 billion in donations from oil executives. The Washington Post broke this story last week. According to the Post, Trump hosted a discussion at Mar-a-Lago with representatives from the American Petroleum Institute, as well as executives from ExxonMobil, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, and Continental Resources. During the roundtable, Trump solicited $1 billion in donations for his presidential campaign super PAC. He promised them that if he's elected, he will cut Joe Biden's funding for electric vehicles and wage war on wind and solar power. It's illegal. I know with Trump, you go, well, what are you going to do? A presidential candidate is forbidden from coordinating with a super PAC, especially the donors to his super PAC. There's a wall between a candidate and the super PAC. You're not allowed to talk to anybody at the super PAC, let alone tell oil executives, you should give my super PAC $1 billion. And you can't make promises in exchange for donations. It is the height of corruption. A lot of these oil executives later told the Washington Post they are reluctant to donate to Trump's super PAC for fear all their money would end up going towards his legal fees. Well, not all. Some of it goes towards the divorce settlement with Melania. California's Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom called Trump's solicitation of donations from oil executives, quote unquote, open corruption. Corruption out in the open. Well, everything Trump does that's corrupt is out in the open. Gavin Newsom said, quote, $1 billion to pollute our states, to pollute our country, and to pollute this planet, and to roll back progress in the open, out in the open. Newsom is saying, out in the open. Trump is saying, give me $1 billion and I'll destroy the planet for you. Governor Newsom of California made that statement during a Vatican climate conference hosted by the Pope. That climate conference included politicians, religious leaders, and scientists from around the world. We have a great Pope. The Pope began the conference by admonishing world leaders for doing too little to combat climate catastrophe. The Pope said, quote, are we working for a culture of life or for a culture of death? Great question. If you're a Republican, you're working for a culture of death. The Republican Party is an apocalyptic death cult. The New York Times reports that since becoming governor and surviving that recall election, Gavin Newsom has fast-tracked legislation that bans the sale of new gas-powered cars by 2035. Now, you'll be able to buy used, don't worry, Jay Leno, you'll be able to buy old gas-powered cars after 2035, but no new cars that run on gas can be sold in California in 9 years. And California's auto regulations inform the rest of the country and the rest of the planet. Despite California being a major oil producer, Gavin Newsom has signed an order to stop adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere by 2045. And he is pushing to ban oil drilling in the state of California within the next 2 decades. This is where it gets very interesting. The Washington Post reported a few weeks back that Newsom's efforts converting to solar power are so successful that solar power is now too cheap in California. Solar power has become too cheap in California. There's less of a financial incentive for people to invest in solar power, and that's a problem. California is cutting back on financial enticements for residents to start putting panels on their roofs. There is a flood of cheap solar energy in California, and now with battery sizes getting bigger, California can store more solar power than ever before, and that means the grid can send out solar energy during the evening or on cloudy days when the sun isn't shining. By the way, Texas, despite being run by oil companies, is producing as much, if not more, solar power than California. I want you to take a look at this because I'm building to a larger point about elections and their consequences and why you should vote and sometimes why you need to be patient. Take a look at this. What is it? It's a graph. It's from the Washington Post. This is the growth of solar rooftop installations in California since 2007. You can see the numbers literally increase exponentially starting in 2012. Look at that. Why is that? What happened? What happened? Well, Obama sorry. What happened is Obama became president. And in 2009, he passed a fiscal stimulus package that came in at around $800 billion. It was too small, but that was all he could get. And he put Joe Biden, his vice president, in charge of making sure there were shovel-ready projects. And Biden was in charge of making certain there was no waste. And there was no waste. Look it up. That stimulus bill back in 2009, no waste. I'll get to Solyndra in a second. That stimulus bill back in 2009 included $90 billion in tax incentives to create jobs in the clean energy sector. It also took government money and invested it in solar power directly, especially with loan guarantees. And Obama used federal money as a down payment that encouraged $150 billion in outside investments in renewable energy like solar. And of course, the loan guarantees. In other words, because Obama's stimulus package invested just with solar power alone, something like $6 billion in solar power. And because of the additional loan guarantees, Wall Street decided to get in on the action, and they invested $150 billion into green energy. It was huge. But all you heard from Rush Limbaugh or Fox News was Solyndra, Solyndra, Solyndra. In case you don't remember, Solyndra is not the name of Beyonce's sister. Her name is Solange. Solyndra was a solar panel manufacturer back in Fremont, California. It was the one President Obama visited personally to showcase his administration's investments in green energy. Unfortunately, Solyndra ended up going belly up. And because the federal government guaranteed roughly $528 million in loans, we got stuck holding the bag, and conservatives being paid by Exxon jumped on this. They screamed, socialism. It's Obama picking winners and losers. See, Solyndra, Solyndra. All that criticism was financed by the Koch brothers, the oil companies. They were against the fiscal stimulus package investing in clean energy. They were against loan guarantees for solar panel companies because the oil companies want us addicted to oil. So they paid Glenn Beck, Rush Limbaugh, Fox News, Republican politicians to spin it and say Obama helping solar energy producers is socialism. According to every talk show radio host back then, every Republican politician, all of whom were taking money from the oil industry, according to them, Obama helping the solar power or the wind power sector, that's socialism. It's not the free market. But when the government leases land to the fossil fuel industry so they can use public property for offshore drilling, we charge them pennies on the dollar. We charge the fossil fuel industry pennies on the dollar for the right to drill our land. When the government does that, that's the government getting out of the way so capitalism can thrive. That's how they spin it. We lease our land to the fossil fuel industry for pennies so they can rack up record profits. And then we give them tax deductions. When we do that, that's capitalism. When our government gives them tax incentives to drill or loan guarantees on expensive fracking equipment, we're being pro-business. But when the government assists a company like Solyndra, that's socialism. Everybody takes from the government. The government is like 1/3 of our economy. You cannot get rich without the government. By the way, fire season in Canada has started. Thousands of people in Western Canada have been forced to evacuate. Evacuation warnings are now spreading this morning to Alberta and Manitoba, with air quality alerts moving south to the United States. This is shaping up to be one of the worst fire seasons on record for Canada, which means here in America, we won't be able to go outside again. Do you remember last year? I know here in New York, we couldn't go outside for days. All of this caused by the burning of fossil fuels. Anyway, back to our evil, nasty government investing in alternative energy. Elon Musk, who is a Trump supporter, sometimes he's the wealthiest man in the world. It depends on how Tesla stock is doing. Elon Musk owes his entire fortune to the United States government. More precisely, to Obama's stimulus package. SpaceX, well, his biggest customers over at SpaceX, NASA, and the military. SpaceX would be dead if it weren't for the socialism of our government picking the winners and the losers, giving military and NASA contracts to SpaceX. Headline from Bloomberg News, June 9th, 2020. Headline, Tesla wouldn't be Tesla without stimulus spending. And what stimulus spending are we talking about? Obama's big spending bill back in 2009 that Joe Biden was in charge of. According to Bloomberg, back in December of 2008, at the depths of the great financial crash, Tesla was just starting out, and Elon Musk whined that nobody was willing to invest in his new battery-powered car company. And he said in an interview that without the government supporting him financially, he would not be able to manufacture electric vehicles for ordinary American consumers. Okay? This is socialism. Let me go full screen here from Bloomberg. I'm going to read from Bloomberg. And by the way, nobody covers capitalism better than Bloomberg, the Wall Street Journal, The Economist, or the Financial Times. I subscribe to all those periodicals because the true nature of capitalism is right out in the open in their pages. There's more transparency to capitalism than you might believe. You might want to start reading the financial journals to get a glimpse into what this economy is really about. Anyway, this is from Bloomberg, okay? I'll read. Musk's plea was, remember, this was end of 2008. It was at the depths of the financial crisis, and Obama was not yet president. He was president-elect. Musk's plea was well-timed. The incoming president, that would be Obama, was keen to use part of the approximately $800 billion stimulus package his team was preparing to create a new green energy economy. 1 year after Obama took office, Tesla got a $465 million federal loan to design electric vehicles and build them at a manufacturing plant in Fremont, California. The company went public shortly thereafter, repaid the loan early, mainstreamed the electric vehicle, and now employs about 20,000 people in the Bay Area alone. It has the second largest market capitalization of any market automaker worldwide. That was 4 years ago. This pig has since moved most of the operations out of Fremont to Texas because of, now that he's rich, he doesn't support socialism for other corporations. Now he's a big Republican, so he moved to Texas. Coal, despite what West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin insists, coal is a dying industry. Wyoming and Montana produce most of our nation's coal, and they're putting out 50% fewer tons of coal than they did 20 years ago. Why? Because renewables and natural gas make coal less competitive, and because the greenhouse gases they emit are not desirable. So, why is coal in decline for the past 20 years? 2009 was, 15 years ago? When did Obama pass the stimulus package that invested in alternative energy? You see the consequences of elections, long-term consequences. Had Democrats been in charge of the Senate all along, we'd be way more ahead in fighting climate catastrophe. Joe Biden's Bureau of Land Management yesterday unveiled plans to wind down the leasing of federal land in the Wyoming and Montana region to coal operators. No more leases of federal land in Wyoming and Montana to coal operators. The Associated Press reports this comes only weeks after the Biden administration warned that coal-fired plants are in danger of getting shut down permanently unless they adhere to Biden's new strict air quality standards. Republicans call Biden's climate change rules a war on coal, as though that's a bad thing. The Associated Press also reports that while America is moving away from it, coal use throughout the world is at an all-time high. One of the many, many good things Joe Biden is accomplishing, all under the radar, putting an end to coal production in this country, doing it quietly. Because if you draw attention to it, you get more enemies who try to block it. So what are the politics of telling coal companies in Wyoming and Montana that they can't get any more leases on federal land? It's kind of interesting, the political calculus here. Jon Tester is the Democratic senator from Montana, and he's running for re-election in the deep, 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 deep red state of Montana. He's an anomaly. He's a Democrat. Republicans believe the road to winning back control of the Senate is through two coal-producing states. West Virginia, where Democrat Joe Manchin announced he's not going to run for re-election, thereby guaranteeing his seat flips, becomes red. And the other coal-producing state, Montana, where Democrat Jon Tester will most likely end up running against Tim Sheehy, a former Navy SEAL turned cattle farmer who has been endorsed by Donald Trump. So, this election right now in Montana is, they say, a toss-up, possibly leaning in the incumbent Jon Tester's favor. Here is where you will see ticket splitting. People will vote for Tester and for Trump. And Tester was leading Sheehy in earlier polls this year, but the latest polling shows Sheehy with a slight lead. Again, these polls are weather. It's not climate. So the politics of Biden waging war on coal. He just told Montana and Wyoming, the two biggest coal-producing states in America, you can't lease any more federal land. What are the politics behind this? Pretty good, pretty smart. The number of Montanans, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but if you're from Montana, you're a Montanan. Well, you're a backwater hick, but anyway, big sky country. It's beautiful. If you're from Hollywood and you're worth $1 billion, it's great to have a place in Montana. And I'm sure you're beloved by the locals. The number of people from Montana who work in coal, what do you think? Because we always say, hey, coal, it's all about jobs. Sure, it's killing everybody, but we got to protect the jobs. How many people do you think in Montana work in the coal industry? 954. That's the politics behind Biden saying to Montana and Wyoming, sorry, you're done here. No more federal leases for coal. Not even 1,000 people in Montana are employed by the coal industry. Little different down in West Virginia, which has about 13,000 people employed in the coal industry, but way, 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 way less than they used to. Coal is a dying industry, especially for workers. I mean, it gives them black lung disease. And here's what is important to remember about coal and the lies Republicans tell about jobs. Coal is not about jobs, okay? Coal is about money. And one of the reasons coal is so cheap to produce is because it doesn't require that many workers. They've gotten very efficient in figuring out how to extract coal without using that many people. It's not about jobs. It's about profits. Okay, the politics behind Biden saying to Wyoming and Montana, the biggest coal producers in the country, no more leasing of federal land. How many people in Wyoming are employed by the coal industry. 5,000. Now, I don't know, Wyoming, isn't that the entire population of Wyoming? But 5,000 coal workers in Wyoming. So, not a lot. Again, it's really important to remember this isn't about, they'll say it's about jobs. It's about, coal is about money. It doesn't take a lot of people anymore to extract coal. That's what makes it so profitable. There's no labor costs. It's not about jobs. It's about profits. So this decision by Biden's Bureau of Land Management cutting off coal leasing in Wyoming and Montana is very smart politically, at least in Montana, for Jon Tester. But Wyoming, Biden isn't winning Wyoming. Liz Cheney couldn't even win Wyoming anymore. But again, Montana has very few coal workers, fewer than 1,000, and therefore this move is less likely to hurt Democrat Jon Tester's reelection bid. By the way, Jon Tester enjoys a 60% approval rating from Montana voters, according to the Cook Political Report. How many politicians can boast a 60% approval rating from their constituents? Trump carried Montana by 16 points over Joe Biden in 2020. So Biden ain't winning Montana. We know Republicans will flip West Virginia in the Senate. Montana, we've been told, could be easy pickings for the GOP. I'm not so sure. Most of what we're hearing is that the House and the Senate will switch hands. Most people are saying Republicans will take control of the Senate from Democrats, and Democrats will take control of the House from Republicans. I think we're more likely to see the Democrats keep the Senate and take the House than we are them flipping control. I think this is maybe not a wave election, but I think Sherrod Brown in Ohio keeps his seat. I think Jackie Rosen in Nevada keeps her seat. Tammy Baldwin in Wisconsin keeps her seat. I don't think Kari Lake has a chance in Arizona against Ruben Gallego. What else am I missing? And I think Jon Tester keeps Montana. There are about 9 toss-ups in the Senate. I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised. I think the Democrats keep the Senate, and I definitely think they take the House. Polling of Americans in general show Democrats leading Republicans by 2 percentage points in terms of a generic House race. So this is not congressional district by congressional district. These are what are called generic polls of likely registered voters being asked, are you voting for a Republican or a Democrat for Congress? Those are called generic congressional polls, not district by district. And right now, Dems are in the lead. And these generic polls can often be a leading indicator of who's going to get control of the House of Representatives. However, because of gerrymandering, Democrats usually need to win about 2 to 3% of the congressional popular vote to take control of the House. Again, the popular vote when it comes to the House of Representatives means nothing. It's district by district, but we look at these generic polls to get a read on momentum. Now, this is important. Every 10 years we do the census. It's mandated by the Constitution. And then we draw new congressional maps based on the census. It's 2024. We're still not done drawing the congressional maps based on the 2020 census. So, there's some good news for Democrats, but some problematic news in North Carolina. The Supreme Court yesterday, the horrible Supreme Court, approved a map giving Louisiana an extra congressional district with a majority black population. That means Democrats are expected to pick up an extra seat in November from Louisiana. I've been looking at the internals on black voters. They're not going anywhere. This idea that, at least not in the swing states, I don't see the polls I'm looking at. Black voters are all in on Joe Biden. I don't know where these polls that people talk about that say Biden's losing the black vote. No, he's not. Not in the swing states, not in Michigan, not in Pennsylvania, not in Wisconsin. So Louisiana will get an extra congressional district. And a lot of maps have been redrawn. Alabama has a new map that created a new heavily black district that will send another Democrat from Alabama to the House. New York redrew some maps that slightly favor the Democrats. Wisconsin redrew its maps for the state legislature. So you're going to see more Democrats elected to Wisconsin's state legislature. It shouldn't have too much of an effect on the congressional races. I don't think they redrew any congressional maps, but you're going to see Democrats gaining more power locally in Wisconsin. The only problem is North Carolina, where Biden is going to win. I spent all of yesterday looking at North Carolina. Now, North Carolina has a new map that gives Republicans the advantage. Some are suggesting that the gerrymandering is so bad, and I read this 3 times. I can't believe it's true, but it is conceivable that North Carolina could flip as many as 4 seats from blue to red in North Carolina. If you live in North Carolina and you're listening to this, let me know if that's true in the comments section. Now, that's gerrymandering. North Carolina nationally is in play. Trump carried North Carolina by 1 percentage point in 2020, and it's looking really bad in North Carolina because of the governor's race. The Lieutenant Governor Robinson, the Republican, is a nightmare for the Republican Party. I've discussed him. I'll bring him up later. So, I like to make predictions. Sometimes I'm wrong, and sometimes I'm incredibly wrong. Actually, I don't know. Sometimes I get things right. I hate to say that. If I had to make a prediction right now, remember, Biden just needs to win Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and he's got it. That's the blue wall. If he can't win Wisconsin, then he needs to win Georgia and Arizona again. He won Arizona and Georgia. So 5 states that Hillary didn't win. That's what made the difference. Okay. But North Carolina is really in play. Really, really, really in play. And if I had to make a prediction, among Georgia, Arizona, and North Carolina, right now, of those 3, I think Biden, his best chance of those 3, North Carolina. It's phenomenal. I mean, it's just phenomenal. His numbers in North Carolina are phenomenal, except with white evangelicals and white Catholics, and it's tighter with white Catholics and or Greek Orthodox. That's his problem. Okay, Michigan. Trump beat Hillary in Michigan by 0.03 percentage points. She didn't campaign in Michigan. I mean, Putin, right? Comey. But she didn't campaign in Michigan, and she lost by 0.03 percentage points. There are a lot of reasons Trump won in 2016. It's not, you can't just say Comey did it, or Putin did it, or Hillary was a bad candidate, or Obama didn't prosecute the bankers. I mean, there are a lot of contributing factors. Well, so Hillary lost by 0.03 percentage points in 2016. Biden beat Trump 4 years ago by nearly 3 percentage points. Okay. Michigan has the largest Arab population in America. And the situation in Gaza has alienated a lot of Arab Americans from Joe Biden. In February, Biden won the Michigan primary with 618,000 votes, but 100,000 Democrats, roughly 13%, voted uncommitted to protest Biden's seemingly unflagging support for Bibi Netanyahu. Michigan is key to Biden's reelection, and he has been working to win back the Arab American vote. Again, the general consensus is this election will be decided by suburban women living in swing states. The Economist has a phenomenal polling database that allows you, if you're a subscriber, to dig down into the internals, and you can stress test various scenarios. Maybe I've spent a little, maybe I got a little sick in the head looking at stuff, but it's a fun database. I have good news for Biden supporters. Do not be misled by swing state polling showing Biden in trouble with Michigan voters. He's going to win Michigan. And he's not going to lose the Arab American vote. Okay? I stress tested this all day yesterday. I don't know if this may, I don't know. It's a little sick. I'm not well in the head. But I stress tested various demographics in Michigan. Among white, non-Latino, female Muslim voters with a high school education living in the suburbs who are between the ages of 25 and 35, Biden leads Trump by 22 percentage points. White, female Muslim voters with high school educations living in the suburbs between the ages of 25 and 34. And I'm going to keep the ages of 25 and 34 because it doesn't change with the age. Age is irrelevant in terms of how these numbers change. So same demo, white, non-Latino, female Muslims between the ages of 25 and 34 living in the suburbs, but with some college. Trump closes the gap with Biden. Biden only leads Trump by 16 points. That's interesting, okay? People with some college are more partial to Trump than people with a high school education. So a little more educated, Trump comes up in the polls. Same demo. But now instead of some college, let's give them a college degree. Let's look at white, non-Latino, female, suburban Muslims between the ages of 25 and 34 who are college graduates. Biden leads Trump by 42 points. And by the way, you can punch in any age demo. It's the same. Okay? All right. Same demo, but instead of white, non-Latino Muslims, let's make them black Muslim women, ages 25 to 34, living in the suburbs of Michigan with a college degree. Biden beats Trump by 84 points. People keep telling me Biden's losing the black vote. I don't see it. Now, you can compare this to 2020, where Biden beats Trump by 86 points instead of 84 points. If that's losing the black vote, I'll take it. Same demo, and then I'll shut up about this. I know this is not it. I mean, I think it's fascinating because this election comes down to female voters in the suburbs. All the other polls are kind of just noise. I don't know if this is interesting to you, but same demo, females between the ages of 25 and 34, white, non-Latino, living in a Michigan suburb. They graduated from college, but instead of Muslim, they're an evangelical Christian. Trump beats Biden by 46 points. That's Biden's Achilles heel. The white evangelical Christian. Same demographic. You make them older, and Trump's lead expands among women who are living in the suburbs of Michigan who are white and evangelical Christians. Same demo, make them Catholic or Greek Orthodox. Trump leads by 10 points. Like I said earlier, Biden's problem with the Catholic vote and the Greek Orthodox vote, not as bad as his problem with white evangelical Christians. But there's really no change from 4 years ago. And Biden won Michigan 4 years ago, and he's going to win Michigan again. He's going to win the black vote in Michigan. He's going to win the Arab American vote in Michigan. When you look at the internals, he's going to win Michigan. Same demo, but make them white, female, Jewish, suburban Michigan voters, same age with a college degree. Biden beats Trump by 16 points. Same demo with Buddhists. Make them Buddhists, Biden wins by 46 points. Make them Hindu, 46 points. And then you can play around with this. A black female living in the Michigan suburbs with a high school degree, no college, but a member of the LGBTQ community, Biden wins by 88 points. Again, Biden's problem in Michigan and elsewhere, white evangelical voters, that's his biggest problem. And then the Catholic vote and the Greek Orthodox vote. 13% of Michigan voters are evangelical Christians. Robert Kennedy Jr. has not made it on the ballot, except in Michigan so far. He will be on the ballot. Latest polls show Biden beating Trump by 3 points. When they poll likely voters, Biden beats Trump by 3 votes. Without Bobby Jr. on the ballot, he only beats Trump by 1 point. But Bobby's going to be on the ballot. And in Michigan, I said this when I was going over Texas, the Bobby Kennedy effect is going to be different in each state. It's not going to be uniform. In some states, Kennedy's going to take votes away from Trump. In some states, he's going to take them away from Biden. Again, I'll get off this, but Michigan's a lock for Joe Biden. Last week, I showed you why Biden's going to win Wisconsin because of abortion. I just showed you how strong he is in Michigan. I'll get to Pennsylvania if I do a show tomorrow or sometime next week. I'll show you Pennsylvania, the problems in Pennsylvania. It's in everybody's best interest to make this a nail biter. Not mine. I have enough stress in my life. But if you're in the news media or if you're a politician, you want voters scared so they vote. This election is going to seem like a nail biter. And I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. We are in uncharted waters. There has never, ever been an election like this. You have 2 incumbents running for re-election. This hasn't happened in more than 100 years. What Teddy Roosevelt ran as a bull moose. What was it? 1914? I think it was 1912. Let me know in the comments section. So I know the world is terrified. By the way, God forbid Trump wins. That's not the end of the world. That's the beginning of the fight. If Trump wins, that's when we get off our asses. But so the world is going to be terrified for the next 5 months. I said this before, and from what I've been looking at, we're going to see a replay of 1980. Jimmy Carter, God bless his soul, versus Ronald Reagan. I told you this before. This is what's going to happen. The polls, we may have, by the time you hear this, Jimmy Carter may have left us. Great man. I told you this before. The polls will stay tight until 36 hours before Election Day. This is what happened in 1980. Within 36 hours of Election Day, the pollsters will come into Joe Biden's hotel room, and they're going to say, Mr. President, we are looking at some really incredible numbers. The same thing happened to Jimmy Carter, God bless him, but the other way around. With Jimmy Carter in 80, the election was tight right up until the Sunday before the election. And it revealed itself as a wave election for Ronald Reagan. I'd say God bless Reagan's soul, but he didn't have one. Biden's not going to lose. People try to say he's a one-term president like Jimmy Carter. In 1980, when Jimmy Carter was running for re-election, inflation was 14%. That was the highest it had been in decades, since like the Korean War. Unemployment was at 7.5%. So you had, what is that, stagflation, where you have high inflation and high unemployment. Right now, unemployment is below 4%. Inflation is 3.4%. Interest rates are too high. That's the Fed's fault. But inflation is 3.4%. So the problem, and most people don't understand this, including me, the problem isn't so much the inflation as it is the high interest rates Jerome Powell over at the Fed is using to combat inflation. And we're no longer certain that raising interest rates has any effect on inflation. The whole idea of raising interest rates, we're told, is to slow the economy down. But the more Jerome Powell raises interest rates, the more the economy just keeps heating up. You know, they've been predicting a recession for 2 years to bring down inflation. Inflation is coming down while the economy continues to heat up. It suggests that maybe we shouldn't depend on the Federal Reserve to control inflation. Maybe inflation is more psychological, has more to do with supply chain, and of course, corporate greed, and a Justice Department that doesn't enforce antitrust laws, although that's changing with Joe Biden. And Joe Biden has been saying inflation is caused by greed and monopolies. I don't know enough about the Fed, other than it's run by bankers, and when you raise interest rates, that's very profitable for the bankers. Look at your credit card statement. When interest rates go up, it costs you more money to service the $10,000 you owe. So part of Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act was a major investment in new green energy, especially electric cars. I'm talking about Michigan now. And Trump has been campaigning in Michigan against electric cars. He's warning that China will flood the American market with cheaper electric cars and end up destroying Detroit as well as the workers. Well, as is the case with Trump, there's always an element of truth. Electric vehicles are cheaper to produce than gas-powered ones, and they do require fewer workers. And yes, China, unchecked, could dominate the American market for electric cars. And this is why supposedly Donald Trump opposes electric vehicles. He just wants gas. So Trump thinks he can win Michigan by pushing for gas-powered cars. He's trying to convince auto workers, non-union auto workers, that what would save jobs is killing Joe Biden's electric vehicle program. So Joe Biden just took the wind out of that argument through good old-fashioned protectionism. Now, we've all been raised that protectionism is bad. Was it Smoot-Hawley that they sometimes blame the Great Depression on? Tariffs are what caused the Great Depression. Biden announced this week new tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles that in some instances, some of these tariffs will double the cost of a Chinese electric vehicle here in America. So there goes Biden's argument against electric vehicles. There goes Trump's argument. Did I say Biden? There goes Trump's argument against electric vehicles. In making the announcement, Biden said, quote, "For too long, it hasn't been fair. For years, the Chinese government has poured state money into Chinese companies. That's not competition, that's cheating. Well, we opened up China. We knew it was a communist country. That's what communist countries do. They pour state money into their corporations. America pours money into American car companies. We bailed out GM. That's not cheating. Look, China is a communist country. They pour money into their companies and they retain a piece. Our government pours money into domestic corporations and we retain no ownership. I don't know why the federal government doesn't own stock in the companies it bails out, but that's for another show. I just know that Obama bailed out GM. He bailed out the banks. We owned stock in GM, non-voting shares of GM, non-voting shares of the banks. We gave it all back. We should have kept it. So, how are we doing on time here? Hey. The debates, they're going to be a disaster for Trump because it's CNN and he's going to keep getting fact-checked. And again, Biden is going to start doing a lot better in the polls once voters, especially the low information ones, start paying closer attention and they'll realize this guy Biden is racking up a series of achievements that rival LBJ. For example, what Republicans keep lying about, crime, way down. Violent crime and murder, way down since those numbers spiked in the final year of Trump's presidency. So during the debate next month, Trump is going to bring up the carnage in blue cities and the crime. He's going to get fact-checked. Sorry, I know Steve Buscemi got punched in the face. That doesn't mean overall violent crime is going up. I'm sorry to see Steve Buscemi get punched in the face here in New York. That doesn't mean overall crime is going up. Reported sexual assaults in the military. New report, down. The number of sexual assaults in the military jumped by 40% during the Trump administration. Now the numbers are coming down. The number of American citizens and foreign nationals overdosing on drugs, opiates in this country, down for the first time in years, down 3%. It rose year after year throughout the Trump administration. Well, the Biden administration cracked down on doctors overprescribing. The The problem is that too many of us can't get the painkillers and Adderall we need. That's for another show. But again, Trump, during the debate, is going to have a tough time challenging Biden's record on fighting drugs. When you ask young voters what their top priority is, besides debt and inflation, for many, it's why aren't we legalizing marijuana? Well, this is huge. President Biden yesterday announced that marijuana will be listed as a Schedule III drug. Right now, marijuana is listed as a Schedule I. It's up there with heroin. And by keeping it as a Schedule I, when everyone knows it's a Schedule III, I don't know, but I know it's not a Schedule I. Why do they keep it as a Schedule I? To arrest black people, primarily, to make it easier for cops to arrest black people holding marijuana, even when they have a prescription for it. Yeah, I know it's against the law for police to arrest a black man for possessing prescription marijuana. I have a friend who spent a week in jail because he's black and a cop wanted to date his sister. So she wouldn't go out with this cop, and my friend got busted for holding on to prescription marijuana. Police do this all the time. The point isn't to convict them, it's to arrest young black men and women, black men. It's not to win a conviction. The point is to arrest, fingerprint, and get young black men into the system. Give them an arrest record. Police, when they do this, when my friend got arrested, the cop knew the charges were going to be dropped. But that's how you put young black men into the system. By making pot Schedule III, it's going to be slightly harder for cops to claim marijuana is grounds for arrest, especially when it's legal now in most states. And they were kind of working off federal statutes to justify temporarily locking up people like my friend, and you get arrested. Sometimes that stays on your record. Not always. This guy, my friend, got arrested, spent a week because he didn't have any money, and they kept him waiting for a judge. A week in jail for carrying prescription marijuana. And I said, well, why aren't you pressing charges for false arrest? And he said to me, what world do you live in? This guy arrested me because he wanted to date my sister. You think I'm going to mess with this guy? Back during the Obama administration, the Labor Department tried to implement a fiduciary rule regarding any broker or financial advisor offering advice on pensions. Too often, I'm going to say all the time, stockbrokers and financial advisors recommend that workers invest their self-administered pensions in products, financial products that benefit the person selling the product at the expense of the investor. Often these financial advisors collect a huge fee for selling the investment product, which always ends up providing a lower return for the worker who bought the investment product. Well, very quietly, Joe Biden's Labor Department reinstated the fiduciary rule. As of September, this is really important, and it's something that I don't really understand, but it's a matter of financial life and death. Biden's Labor Department quietly reinstated the fiduciary rule. As of September of this year, it will be illegal for investment advisors to recommend any financial product in which they have a conflict of interest. Any investment product that benefits the advisor over the investor seeking the advice, that's now illegal. The Council of Economic Advisors estimates $5 billion a year is lost to investors because financial advisors put them into risky investments that benefit the advisor at the expense of the investor. After this is just, after the fiduciary rule was announced, Senator Joe Manchin, the outgoing Democratic senator from West Virginia, joined 15 other Republican senators to co-sponsor the Congressional Review Act, which would overturn the Biden administration's new fiduciary rule. Let's find out how much money Wall Street donated to these pigs, including Joe Manchin, to introduce this resolution. Because Wall Street was built on really stupid, immoral people profiting off bad financial advice that benefits the advisor but not the client. Republican Senator Ted Budd of North Carolina pilloried the new fiduciary rule, saying it cuts down on financial choice. Yeah. Now you can't choose to get ripped off by shady financial advisors. Republican Senator Ted Budd said, quote, "The Biden administration's latest executive overreach would make it harder for working families to invest and prepare for their financial future." Bullshit. He went on to say consumers would lose access to financial advice. It will reduce the number of financial management options and throw a would-be retiree's financial security into uncertainty. There's no such thing, by the way, as financial advice. It's an entire financial advisors, stockbrokers, as Bernie Sanders says, it's an entire industry built on fraud. The business model for financial advisors, for mutual funds, fraud. So here's the only financial advice you need when it comes to the stock market. I'm not going to talk about annuities or, insurance. It's all very complicated. It involves actuarial tables. But if you're 35 or younger and you have money that you want to put away for the long term, and you're thinking of investing in the stock market, here is the only financial advice you need. If you're young and you want to invest in the stock market, and that's really the only people who should be in the market are young people, because you can ride it out. Here's what you do. Buy an index fund that mimics the S&P 500. Every other investment advice that you're given is fraud. Every other mutual fund is a ripoff, is fraud. I dare anybody who works in the financial industry to challenge me on this. Every mutual fund other than an index fund that mimics the S&P 500 over a 10-year horizon is compared to an S&P index fund, it's fraudulent. There are roughly 8,000 mutual funds you can choose from, right? It's all about choice, right? That's what Senator Butt wants to protect. Now, financial advisors are incentivized to put you into one of those 8,000 mutual funds because they collect a fee. But none of those 8,000 mutual funds, none is a good investment. I challenge anybody who works in the financial industry to prove me wrong. Looking out over a 10-year horizon, not a single one of those 8,000 mutual funds can outperform the stock market, the index funds. Again, if you're looking at a 10-year horizon, not a single one of those 8,000 mutual funds outperforms the market. And while they not only underperform the market, they skim off the top and charge enormous fees. If you're young, I'm talking about you're under the age of 35, go F yourself, and I mean that. How dare you be under the age of 35? Where am I? Thinking about it. Okay. If you're under the age of 35 and you're looking for financial advice, there's a very simple rule to determine who's on the take and who isn't. Who's working in your best interest? This is the fiduciary test. Has the person advising you told you to invest only in an S&P index fund? Anyone who tells you to only put your money for the stock market, if you want to invest in the stock market and you're under the age of 35, anyone who tells you to invest in the stock market for the long term by buying an index fund that mimics the S&P 500, that financial advisor is honest. But good luck finding one. Good luck finding a financial advisor willing to tell you, my friends and the people who, we don't know what we're doing. It's all guesswork, and we make it complex when it shouldn't be. And we're just ripping you off. You should just buy a Vanguard index fund. So do that. If you're saving for your retirement, that's the test. Ask a financial advisor, how would you invest in the stock market? If they tell you to put your money in anything other than an index fund that mimics the S&P 500, they're violating the fiduciary rule that Joe Biden just passed. By the way, a good rule when it comes to finance is always report your accountant and a stockbroker to FINRA and now the Consumer Protection Financial Bureau. Always write letter. I don't do it. I'm too busy. But it's always a good idea. Always report a lawyer to the Bar Association. Just create, I don't do this. I should have, especially during my divorce. But if you want to make me happy, just no matter, even if the lawyer is good, report him to the bar. It creates paperwork for them, and it just slows them down and makes them the fewer lawyers with free time, the better. Get into the habit of writing. Okay. If you don't understand finance, you're not supposed to. The reason our finances, our taxes are complicated, it's all part of what I call the complexity industrial complex. We have some new listeners. They haven't heard me talk about the complexity industrial complex. Take something simple, make it complex, and then charge people a lot of money to disentangle it for you. The complexity industrial complex. The Supreme Court on Thursday refrained from gutting the Consumer Protection Financial Bureau, an Obama-era agency designed to protect American consumers from predatory lenders. The entire financial crisis of 2008 was caused by predatory loans. Mortgage brokers giving anyone a mortgage, convincing hardworking Americans they could afford a home, when in fact they couldn't. Then the entire mortgage industry in 2008 collapsed and took capitalism down with it. We suffer from collective amnesia. You have to remember that in 2008, at the end of George W. Bush's administration, capitalism died. It was bailed out by the government and the Federal Reserve. But in 2008, in November of 2008, capitalism died. Unregulated, laissez-faire capitalism was declared dead, and the entire world economy came crashing down. And what turned it around was socialism for the banks, for the lenders. See, the Federal Reserve is not technically the United States government. So technically, nobody is calling this recovery from the financial crisis what it really is. And that is, capitalism died, the Federal Reserve stepped in, and we now have a state-run economy. Except the Federal Reserve is a central bank that's not part of the government, so you can't really say it's a state-run economy. Through quantitative easing, the Federal Reserve began to buy up every bad mortgage, every bad loan. We don't even know how much. You can't audit the Fed. It's smoke and mirrors. So we don't know how many trillions and trillions of dollars worth of mortgages and bad bonds and collateralized debt obligations, how many insurance markers that were taken out on loans. It was a casino. They were betting on loans. We have no idea how many bets the Federal Reserve bought up, trillions and trillions of dollars. The Federal Reserve basically bought our economy. That's how they put an end to the financial collapse that started in 2008. Federal Reserve bought the economy. It wasn't TARP. It wasn't about $1 trillion that Congress handed over to the banks. It was the Fed buying up every bad loan, every bad bet on a bad loan. That's not capitalism. That's not a laissez-faire economy. That's the government owning pretty much the entire economy, but not telling us. And they get away with it because the Federal Reserve is a central bank that isn't really the government, but it is. Well, Elizabeth Warren was supposed to head Obama's new Consumer Protection Financial Bureau. But Republicans, who crashed the economy, refused to allow Obama to appoint her, so instead she ran for Senate and won. And Republicans, since Dodd-Frank, have been trying to gut the Consumer Protection Financial Bureau. Trump put Mick Mulvaney in charge of the CFPB, and it was his intent to dismantle it brick by brick. Mulvaney literally requested zero funding for it. Mulvaney, as head of the Bureau, sided with the payday lenders. And that kind of makes sense, since when he was a congressman, his biggest donors were payday lenders. When he was in Congress, Mulvaney got at least $60,000 in donations from payday lenders, and he returned the favor when he was put in charge of the Consumer Protection Financial Bureau. Well, it all went before the Supreme Court this week. Republican state attorneys general, I think that's the plural, they filed a lawsuit that made it to the Supreme Court this week, challenging the existence of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They didn't like the way it's being funded. See, Obama wanted to make the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau immune from politics. So they made sure it was funded by the Federal Reserve so that Congress, Republicans, couldn't underfund the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, because Republicans hate any agency that regulates loan sharks. Well, Republicans sued. They called the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau illegitimate because the funding for it comes from the Federal Reserve and not Congress. And they argued before the Supreme Court that the mere existence of the Consumer Protection Financial Bureau violates the Appropriations Clause of the Constitution, which states funding for government agencies is vested in Congress. But the Supreme Court, including Clarence Thomas, rejected that argument on Thursday, saying no, funding for the Consumer Protection Financial Bureau is perfectly legitimate because it was established through an act of Congress that then delegated its appropriations powers to the Federal Reserve. So we still have a Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Every once in a while, the Supreme Court does something for us. This and the Louisiana congressional map. It has been almost a month since our Supreme Court heard oral arguments on presidential immunity. Still no ruling. The court just can't seem to make up its mind whether an ex-president can or can't be prosecuted for ordering SEAL Team 6 to kill his political opponent. They just can't decide. The New York Times reports this morning that Justice Samuel Alito, he wrote the majority decision overturning Roe. Justice Alito hung a United States flag upside down outside his home to protest Joe Biden's inauguration. It was all part of a symbolic gesture by the Stop the Steal organizers who gave us January 6th. People who opposed Joe Biden's inauguration were told to hang the flag upside down. Samuel Alito was hanging the flag upside down after January 6th. This is the picture outside his home. I'm sure Leonard Leo bought that flag for him. This is the flag hanging upside down 11 days after January 6th, 3 days before Biden's inauguration. Alito is showing solidarity with the Stop the Steal people who gave us January 6th. Alito told the Times, "I had nothing to do with this. I swear to God," he said, "it's my wife's fault." Well, Alito was born in Jersey. So was Senator Robert Menendez, and that's what we do in Jersey. Blame the wife. It's my wife's fault. What a scuzzbag. My wife did it. White-collar workers in managerial positions are rarely offered overtime. Chain stores will bump someone up to manager just so they can make them work longer hours but not pay them time and a half. The Biden administration just issued a new rule saying any salaried employee earning up to roughly $60,000 a year will now be entitled to overtime pay, whether you're a manager or not. Under the Trump administration, salaried employees earning less than $35,000 a year, only they qualified for overtime. Biden has nearly doubled the threshold to be eligible for overtime, which will benefit millions of Americans in managerial positions. If you are a salaried employee now, if you work in retail and they made you a manager, well, in the past you weren't eligible for overtime. Now, if you're earning up to about $60,000 a year, you're about to be entitled to overtime pay. So you may want to look into that. And you have to be told that by your boss that you qualify. Joe Biden's Federal Trade Commission filed suit to block the largest merger of grocery stores in American history. Kroger and Albertsons announced the merger earlier in the year, and the Biden administration filed suit last month to block the merger. Biden said the merger will result in higher food costs, inflation, and it will wipe out thousands of good, high-paying union jobs. As I said earlier, you want to bring down inflation? Forget the Federal Reserve. Have the FTC and the Justice Department enforce antitrust laws. This week, in an attempt to placate the FTC, Albertsons and Kroger's began making themselves smaller by selling off individual supermarkets in the hope that by the time they go to court, the judge will not view them as too big and will allow the merger to go through. This is how you combat inflation, not by raising interest rates, by telling Kroger and Albertsons, no, you can't merge. Michael Kors, this is very important to me, this story. Michael Kors and Coach, the makers of luxury handbags, announced plans to merge their two companies, creating one handbag manufacturer, one luxury handbag manufacturer that employs 33,000 people worldwide. The Biden administration said not so fast, and they're standing up to big handbag. They're standing up to big oil, and now they're standing up to big handbag. The FTC filed, this is very important to me, the FTC filed a lawsuit to block the merger, saying combining the two companies would inflate the prices of luxury handbags, while at the same time resulting in massive layoffs. Biden's FTC said they are trying to make certain that the luxury handbag market is still competitive. This is very important to me. I don't understand handbags. All I know is you never question why or how much a woman spent on a handbag. It's one of the great mysteries, and I've learned to keep my mouth shut. Handbags are like abortion. Men have no say. It's up handbags and it's up to a woman to decide. And by blocking the merger of Michael Kors and Coach, the Biden administration is clearly showing that it is pro-choice. A woman should be free to choose between a Michael Kors luxury handbag and a Coach luxury handbag. Not one handbag made by a giant conglomerate. There must be more choice for luxury handbag consumers. don't get the luxury, don't get handbags. From what I can tell, handbags are to women what penises are to men. In other words, women only care what other women think of their handbags, and men only care what other men think of their penises. Handbag. No guy ever said, wow, I really love your handbag. Never. But women care about other women's handbags. And guys only care what other men think of their dicks. Women don't care about a guy's penis, at least not the way other guys care about another guy's penis. And I find that unfair, because a woman can buy a new handbag, but a guy, when he gets sick of his penis, feels that it's out of style. We're stuck with it. You can't buy a new penis. You can buy a new handbag. Look, I know giving birth is very painful, but the trade-off is you get to buy a new handbag. Men can't buy a new penis. All we can do is dress it up a bit in designer caps. Maybe have the testicles rotated and painted in horizontal stripes to make it look less droopy. At least that's what I do. Every 2 or 3 years, I buy a designer cap, get the rims shined, and I try not to scrimp on the Rust-Oleum. A lot of guys don't spring for the Rust-Oleum, and they wait until the oxidation has gotten so bad the rust permeates the bolts and joints, and your penis starts looking really run down. And you do not want, especially as you age, you don't want a rusty, run-down penis. I need medical help. I don't know. Like some kind of new meds for the brain. I don't know. Like, what am I doing? How long is this show? 2 hours and 22 minutes. Is anybody even watching this, listening to this? Who cares? I don't do this for an audience. I do this for myself. So I don't know if anybody's still listening, but I'm basically Rupert Pupkin. Remember that movie that De Niro made, like 1981, 82, the stand-up comic who lived in his mother's basement and had cardboard cutouts of celebrities. That's what I feel like right now. President Biden has also put an end to non-compete clauses, which in the past prevented someone who works at McDonald's from quitting in order to take a higher paying job across the street at, say, Wendy's. 1 in 5 American workers is under some type of non-compete clause, and they have grown common, especially among low-wage workers, for the sole purpose of keeping those jobs low wage. That's what a non-compete clause is about with low-wage workers, keeping the jobs low wage. If you can't, as a worker, threaten to walk across the street and work there, there's no incentive to pay you more or make your working conditions more pleasant. Well, because of the Biden administration, all non-compete clauses are about to become null and void. Not just new non-compete clauses, all non-compete clauses. The ones you're under now, if you're currently abiding by one, your employer now has a legal obligation to notify you that that non-compete clause is null and void. Find out if you're working under a non-compete clause. 1 out of 5 of my listeners are. If you aren't notified that that non-compete clause is null and void, write a letter to the FTC. FTC Chair Lina Khan, in outlawing non-compete clauses. By the way, one of the best appointments Biden ever made, Lina Khan. Lina Khan, in outlawing non-compete clauses, said, quote, "Non-compete clauses keep wages low, suppress new ideas, and rob the American economy of dynamism. The FTC's final rule to ban non-competes will ensure Americans have the freedom to pursue a new job, start a new business, or bring a new idea to market," unquote. Business groups, especially in the fast food industry, are opposing this new rule, saying non-compete clauses are necessary for maintaining trade secrets. What trade secrets? That employees at Burger King don't wash their hands after using the restroom? What trade secrets? Republicans are all about freedom unless it's actual freedom, especially for workers. Joe Biden's Department of Transportation has ordered airlines to issue checks, not travel vouchers, checks, refunds, anytime a flight is canceled or significantly delayed. I don't have to remind you that air travel has become a nightmare, with airlines canceling flights because they haven't sold enough tickets, but they blame it on the weather or on equipment. The Transportation Department also issued a new rule mandating that airlines and travel agents inform consumers of any extra fees before the ticket is purchased. As many of you know, baggage fees are often charged when the flyer checks in after the ticket has already been purchased and it's too late to say no to the baggage fee. This is all part of President Biden's war on junk fees. And here's the best part. Airlines have to issue the refund within 7 days and return the money in the form which the ticket was purchased. In other words, you buy an airline ticket using a credit card, the airline has 7 days to reverse the charges on your credit card. None of this, the check is in the mail, but you first need to fill out this application and mail it in. And then in 90 days, if you call us and remind us, we'll send you a check. You put it on a credit card to buy the ticket. They cancel your flight. Thanks to Joe Biden. 7 days to reverse the charge on your credit card. So, why did I mention all these executive orders that took place in the past 3 weeks? Because Joe Biden, flying under the radar, is the most consequential president in modern American history. By the way, he pulled us out of Afghanistan. He hasn't gotten us into any wars, despite what's going on in Gaza and Ukraine. He's not sending any troops overseas. COVID is no longer a national emergency. Our infrastructure is getting rebuilt. Wage growth is outpacing inflation. Crime is down. And Joe Biden's done all this and way, way more by being very, very quiet about it and by leading from behind. Sadly, it's one of the reasons his poll numbers don't reflect all these accomplishments. He's not capable of braggadocio. But this is why Trump is going to lose next month's debate. Without a crowd, with just Joe Biden and CNN in the room, Trump will not get away with telling lies. And the only reason Trump is doing as well as he is right now is he hasn't debated anyone. He sat out the primary debates. Nobody challenges him. He hasn't held a press conference. He just issues proclamations that go unchallenged. That's about to change at the end of June when he debates Joe Biden on CNN, if he doesn't back out. I would advise him to back out. It's not going to be pretty. Here is Jeff Van Drew. He's a New Jersey congressman. I believe he used to be a Democrat. And then he switched parties after after Trump won. I also think he's a dentist. I'm not sure. Like Paul Gosar, dentist. Here is Republican Jeff Van Drew last weekend warming up the crowd for Trump. Now, I can't believe he said this. I cannot believe Jeff Van Drew said this in front of people.
We are here because we remember where we were 4 years ago. We remember 4 years ago when we had a great economy, and we see what's happening right now in an economy that's faltering.
We remember where we were 4 years ago. Do we? Do ya? See, this is the difference between a rally and next month's debate. At a rally, at a Trump rally, you can say whatever you want. At a debate, you can't. When it's one-on-one with the moderator fact-checking, Trump is going to get his ass handed to him next month. So, he says, Jeff Van Drew says, we remember where we were 4 years ago. Well, in May of 2020, 4 years ago, New Jersey's unemployment rate was 15.4%. Today, it's 4.8%, which is somewhat high considering the national average is 3.8%. Do you remember where you were 4 years ago, Jeff Van Drew? Do the Republicans remember? Joe Biden has recorded the longest stretch of job growth in modern American history. We were in a recession 4 years ago, the worst since at least the financial crisis. I know, blame it on COVID. And whose fault was COVID? China's, right? Meanwhile, the stock market closed yesterday at a record high. It's crunch time now. We're 6 months away. Donald Trump, besides the criminal trials, has no record to run on other than his criminal record, which he claims is Joe Biden persecuting his opponents. Donald Trump has no record to run on. He cannot run on fixing COVID. Biden can. Trump can't even run on the vaccine. He can't even run on Operation Warp Speed, which began during his administration because his voters are anti-vax. He can't run on crime. He can lie about crime because crime is down. He can't run on anything, including the migrant crisis, because Joe Biden and the Democrats and the Republicans agreed to a bipartisan immigration deal. the most transformative immigration deal in 30 years, and Trump jettisoned it specifically because it would be good for Joe Biden. So he's going to bring up the migrant crisis during the debate. Joe Biden is going to say, we had a deal and you killed it. Trump has absolutely nothing to run on. He can't run on the economy. Now, yes, inflation has caused interest rates to rise, making credit card debt crushing. But inflation is down. We're only like 1 point away from the sweet spot when it comes to inflation. Trump now knows. I'm going to play you a clip, and then I'm going to wrap it up. It's incredible. It is. Trump knows that all economic numbers point in Joe Biden's favor. Trump lost more jobs as president than any president since Herbert Hoover. Donald Trump has created, Joe Biden has created more jobs than any president in American history. So here is Donald Trump trying to get his arms around Bidenomics. He knows this is a good economy. This is what he's going to pull out of his ass during the debate. This is what Trump said about Joe Biden's economy at that big rally in New Jersey last weekend. Listen to this.
People are hearing, oh, our economy, his job numbers are fake. They're totally fake. They're fixed numbers. They're rigged numbers. Everything about them are rigged.
Let me play that again, because I really... let me see if I can play that again. I can't play it again. Yes, I can. Here we go. So he's recognizing that the economy is incredible right now.
People are hearing, oh, our economy, his job numbers are fake. They're totally fake. They're fixed numbers. They're rigged numbers. Everything about them are rigged.
Everything about the job numbers are fixed and rigged. The record growth, it's rigged. If you don't like the numbers, say it's rigged. 4 years ago in New Jersey, 15.4% were unemployed. Today, stock market is at record highs. Is the stock market rigged? Well, actually it is. But that's for another show. But the stock market is rigged. Did it touch 40,000 or 30,000 yesterday? I think 40,000. The stock market is rigged. There are 30 stocks in the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Okay? Pay attention to this. If one of those stocks in the Dow Jones Industrial Average, you know, when you read the news, they go, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was up 100 points today, right? Those are 30 stocks. There are 30 stocks. If one of those stocks starts underperforming, they kick it out and they replace it with a stock that's doing better. For example, General Electric was kicked out of the Dow Jones Industrial Average because General Electric started a tank 6 years ago. GE was one of the 30 stocks in the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and the people who run that index said, GE is a loser, let's replace it with Walgreens. See how it works? See how it's rigged? So yes, they tell you, especially young people, invest in stocks. The Dow Jones Industrial Average over the long run, over 120 years, even with the ups and the downs, it has averaged 11% a year for more than a century. That's what they'll tell you. Well, that's because it's rigged, literally rigged. They kick out the underperforming stocks and replace them with better stocks. And then they tell you, oh, look at that index. The market always goes up. The S&P 500 you'll hear that the S&P 500 was up 2% today. What is the S&P 500? It's the 500 top stocks in America. It's an index. It's rigged. 1/3 of those 500 companies listed in the S&P 9 years ago have been kicked out, 1/3, and replaced by companies that are doing better. So, of course, you're going to hear that the S&P and the Dow Jones Industrial Average are hitting record highs because the S&P got rid of 1/3 of the companies that weren't doing well and put in companies that are doing well. If you fill a basket with just winners, you're rigging the system, and it's going to look like you're always winning. Let me make this as simple. Imagine an apartment building with 500 units, okay? Every couple of years, let's say I own a building with 500 units in it, and every couple of years, I check the net worth of all the people living there. And I say, if you're not worth at least $1 million, I'm kicking you out. And I'm replacing you with someone who is worth at least $1 million. Right? That's what the S&P 500 does. They say, you got to be successful or we're kicking you out. So I own a building, 500 units, you have to be a millionaire. If you're not a millionaire, I kick you out. And then I say, hey, look, everyone who lives here is a millionaire. There must be something about this building that makes people rich. No, you kicked out 1/3 of the residents because they weren't worth $1 million and replaced them with new residents who were worth $1 million. That's why the stock market is rigged. And what's the answer? Work hard, save your money. Don't think you're going to pay for your retirement with shopdavidfeldman.com. If you're going to play the stock market, if you're under the age of 35, index funds that mimic the S&P 500. Because the index funds are kicking out the losers and replacing them with the winners. So you might as well own the S&P 500. Those 8,000 mutual funds that try to pick stocks, you buy any one of those 8,000 mutual funds, you're certainly going to underperform the S&P 500. And that's a fact. Very few people know this. Years ago on this show, I had Steve Forbes on. He had written a book. And at the end of I got to find this clip. It's just audio. And I told him this. I said I explained to him why the whole system is rigged. And I got to play the clip. And there was this long pause, and he said, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Of course I'm right. And nobody knows this. Nobody says this. Nobody says this. I'm going to find that clip. Meanwhile, Trump is talking about how the economy is rigged. His Truth Social stock, if you remember, merged and formed the new Trump Media company, and it's being traded on the stock market. This morning, we learned that Trump Media will not be able to issue its quarterly earnings report because its accountant has been kicked out of the business for massive fraud. I talked about this 2 weeks ago. but now they can't issue their earnings report. There's going to be a delay on finding out how much Trump media lost during the last quarter, because the accounting company that shepherded Trump media, helped it go from a private company to a publicly traded company. The SEC just banned that accountant from ever doing business again. Mr. Trump, do you have a response to that?
Everything about them are rigged, from the elections to the economy, everything.
Yeah, everything's rigged. So why not rig it yourself? From the elections to the economy, it's all rigged. Well, if you don't like the results, it's all rigged. Biden and Trump debate on CNN June 27th in Atlanta. No audience. Trump won't be allowed to lie. He's going to lose. And after he loses the debate, the first thing he's going to say is,
everything about them are rigged, from the elections to the economy, everything.
yeah, the debate was rigged because I lost. 17% of voters are blaming Biden for Roe getting overturned. The only way Trump can win in November is because he lied about everything, and the American people are too stupid to know that. Or they don't care that he lied, which makes them even dumber. As I mentioned earlier, Thomas Jefferson said a well-informed citizenry is the best defense against tyranny. Up until 1933, Germany produced some of the world's greatest scientists, philosophers, and artists the world has ever seen. But then the stupid took over. Hitler was stupid. Trump is stupid. The people Trump surrounds himself with are even stupider than he is. And the people who vote for Trump are even dumber than all of them. If we learned anything from COVID, it's that stupid people will get you killed. If we've learned anything from people like Kyle Rittenhouse and the gun nuts, stupid people will get you killed. If we learned anything from Exxon and all their lobbyists, politicians, and conservative pundits who take money from Exxon to deny climate catastrophe, stupid people get you killed. Election day is Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. Are you registered? Are you going to vote? Do you care? Or are you stupid? I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. If you want a transcript of this program, people have requested them in the past. It's time-consuming to prep them. Thanks to artificial intelligence, it's gotten a little easier to prep transcripts, so I'm making transcripts available for free. There's a link in the description down below, or go to shopdavidfeldman.com and hit the transcripts menu. We have all the transcripts for all of May, and they're free. I put it over there at shopdavidfeldman.com because people who were stupid enough to purchase the garbage over there, like this. What is it? Uncle Scam? Some idiots. I asked you not to buy anything, but you didn't listen. Because some idiots were stupid enough to buy the garbage over at shopdavidfeldman.com, I'm able to put the transcripts, take the time to put them up for free of charge. people say they want the transcripts. So, okay. Assuming, before I go, thank you for listening, by the way. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. I'm sorry about the coughing. It'll get better. It's a combination of a residual cold and hay fever. Please like this episode. Please share it. Thank you to people in the chat room. Thank you to Bob in the chat room for keeping it civilized. Please leave a comment. I read all your comments. Also, assuming Trump doesn't change his mind, this big debate will be on June 27th. I am thinking of doing a watch party on Zoom the way we used to do. Here's what I'm thinking, and leave a comment and let me know what you think. To keep the trolls out, I might charge something to get in. I don't know how much, but charging something like $1.50, $1 will keep the trolls out, and it'll keep my lights on here. I'm thinking of charging like what it would cost to buy a copy of the New York Times, just enough to keep the trolls out. And if you can't afford it, just let me know, and I'll let you in for free. This is what I'm thinking. This way we can watch the debate together, and then I'll record afterwards an episode of my podcast, just the audio. It won't be video. I'll take your calls via Zoom. We can talk. I'll record an audio pod. Maybe Ethan will come. Maybe Dr. Hirschenfeld. Maybe Robert Smigel will do Donald Trump. There'll be no video for the. If you're a listener, it'll be done as a webinar, so nobody can see anybody. You can only see me and my guests. It'll be kind of like YouTube, where you can chat, but nobody can see anyone, because I found when we did meetings, it was distracting, and nobody wants to be seen, including me. Let me know in the comments section if you'd be interested in coming to a debate watch party on Zoom. If you were a member of my old community before it collapsed, it's gonna be different. I think I've learned from previous mistakes. I think not being able to see everybody, I think it's better to just use the chat room to communicate, or raise your hand and I'll call on you. I think a more disciplined approach might be healthier. All right, that's it. I think I've covered everything. I will probably not do a show tomorrow, but I will do my show Saturday, late Saturday night, early Sunday morning. Thank you for putting up with this garbage. Thank you.